Hello and welcome to TrekMate Presents. My name is Wayne Emery. When I was growing up, there was a select few people that truly influenced the person in which I grew up to be today. Obviously, my parents and brothers and sisters played a huge part in moulding my personality. But as well as them, there was someone that truly stood out in my life. He taught me my basic moral compass that I still today strive to live by. He taught me to value truth, justice, honour and loyalty. He inspired, entertained and really brought my imagination to life. Though I am sure I'm not the only person who felt this way. This week I'm being joined by none other than the Lord of the Thundercats himself, the man behind Lion-O, the one and only Larry Kenney.
Oh my goodness. Hello Wayne, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good.
What a lovely introduction. Thank you very much. Of course, now I know that it's not me that's responsible for that, but it was Lion-O. But I accept your generous comments on his behalf.
Well, the thing is, you was obviously a vital part of that system, as well as the writers and animators. You was a vital part. You're the man that brought that character to life.
Well, that's true, I guess, and thank you again for that. And that's one of the reasons that I I must say all the rest of the people who worked on creating Thundercats. That's the reason that we all hold very dear the legacy that it created, and that you fans created, and why we're very protective of its legacy. And it means a lot to us too, because over the years I've received lots of mail originally, and then email and phone calls, and when I meet people at Comic-Cons and things, many of them say that very thing, and that's important to me, and it means a lot to me to have been a part of something that's become so iconic, not just as entertainment, but I know that it meant a lot more. The show meant a lot more than just entertainment to many people, and I appreciate that.
It really did, and that's the thing. I can't stress enough. I know you've heard this hundreds of thousands of times by now, but that show really did mean a lot to me, and still does to this day. And no matter how many times I've heard it, it's always nice to hear. So thank you, Wayne. Now, long before there was Lion-O, there was Larry.
Yeah, way long before.
So do you mind going back to the very beginning?
No, of course not. Well, I was born at 9 a.m. Well, you don't mean that beginning, do you?
Well, you grew up in Illinois, didn't you?
I did, which is right. It's called the Midwest in this country. It's not actually in the middle of the country, but of course it was before the country was fully developed and spread out to California. But anyway, it's for those of you who may not know in your audience, because you're in the UK. It borders Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin. It borders Missouri, Kentucky. We have a lot of neighbors because of the unusual shape of the state. And I was born right in the middle of that state. Let me put it this way, halfway between Chicago and St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And we do have a lot of American listeners as well, so I'm sure they'll be nodding along in agreement.
They'll know where it is.
Yeah.
Sure. The town is actually called, I grew up in a town called Pekin, Illinois, Pekin. But more people will recognize the town right across the river where I started my career in radio, and that's Peoria, Illinois. So, in fact, there's a phrase here in this country that I think got started in the theater business, when Broadway shows used to go out on the road and vaudeville shows before they played New York. They always asked, "Will it play in Peoria?" Because it's considered like the heartland of the country, where it's not a big city and it's just common folks, and if it'll play there, it should play anywhere,
Yeah, if it speaks to the average Joe, then you've got it sussed.
Exactly. It's kind of like the Liverpool, or
Yeah.
Manchester, maybe, of England. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, just out of curiosity, did you say the place was called Pekin?
Did I what?
The place that you grew up was called Pekin.
Pekin, yes, Pekin. The story that I got growing up is that it was named that because it's on the exact same parallel geographically as Peking, China. In fact, there's also down about 40 miles away is a town called Canton, Canton,
yeah.
Illinois. And so that may be true. I don't know.
So is there no correlation to pecan nuts then?
No, that's Pecan. but a lot of people in Pekin were nuts, so
yeah.
there could be some similarity there.
So when you was growing up,
yeah.
who?
Well, I never did grow up, but you mean as I was.
When you was a younger lad.
Yeah.
Who was it that entertained and inspired you?
Yeah, well, my favorites were Jonathan Winters, who just passed away last week. W.C. Fields. I loved funny people. I loved funny guys. Johnny Carson, who was the host of the Tonight Show, and
yeah.
I just liked any comedian, stand-up comedian or comedic actors, because I was a what we call here a class clown in school. I like to joke. It's true, but I like to joke that about all the teachers and proctors and school officials and authority figures all throughout my life who said to me, Larry, I hope when you grow up you find a way to make a decent living with your funny voices and your little jokes. And I did.
Did you ever go back just to rub it in their face?
Exactly. But most of them are probably dead now, so I don't get that satisfaction.
Yeah, no.
I was a class clown, always joking around, and I would watch the people that I've just mentioned to you, like Jonathan Winters, at night on television. I would stay up late, and of course my parents didn't allow me to stay up and watch television. But I would peek through the keyhole in my door and watch the Tonight Show and Jonathan Winters and people like that were on the show, and I would kind of memorize their routines, and I would do the whole routine the next day at school. And of course the other children hadn't seen it, and so they thought I was making all of this up. But I found early in life that if you you have to walk a fine line in school of being being clever and being too funny, being too rowdy and not paying attention, So I guess I walked that line pretty well. But I found early on that if you can make people laugh, especially girls, they love a guy that'll make them laugh, and you get invited to all the best parties, because they want you to entertain, and it worked well for me.
So when you obviously you're saying you was doing funny voices, when did that start turning into impressions? My
parents tell me that I would mimic people I saw on television, whether it was a British actor or a German actor or whatever. They tell me that soon after I began speaking English words, that I was. They didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, they tell me you were mimicking. You were doing impressions of those people as a 2-year-old.
It was inbuilt in you.
I guess so. I tend to think it's because I have no other skills.
Compensating.
I don't know what else. Frankly, well, I started so early in the business. I started in radio in Peoria, Illinois, as a disc jockey when I was 15 years old, and even then I incorporated the impressions and the character and cartoony voices that I had made up into the music show, and I did that throughout my moves from the small town of Peoria, Illinois, to Fort Wayne, Indiana, a little larger town, and then to Cleveland, which was a major city, then on to Chicago, and then New York. And then when I first got to the larger cities, the first one, the large one was Cleveland, I discovered that you can make at least as much, if not much more money doing commercials than you can sitting for 4 hours playing records on the radio. So I kind of left the radio and started doing commercials, which I still do, you know.
Yeah, no, and just to touch on radio again, how did you get such an opportunity at such a young age?
It was very serendipitous. I as a sophomore in high school, 10th grade, as I recall, there were two what we called here. There were courses that you didn't have to take. You know, it wasn't English or history or
extracurricular.
Geography. They were what is it?
Extracurriculum.
Yes, and we called them electives.
Yeah.
And my counselor gave me the choice of either taking sociology or a radio class. We didn't have a radio station at the high school, but we had a radio studio, a brand new radio studio. How that happened, I don't know. And there was a radio class where you could, you know, learn how to you could prepare for a job in radio. Mm-hmm. So I took that class, and at the end of the semester, a gentleman from the radio station in Peoria came to our class and said, "We're looking for someone to do a 1-hour show on Saturdays, you know, and anyone who'd like to audition, you know, come to Peoria over the weekend and audition." Well, at that time, even though I was only 15, it was 2 weeks before my 16th birthday, but I was 15. Up until then, for the previous year, I had been a newspaper sports reporter. Mm-hmm. I always was a kind of a go-getter. I worked from the time I was able to. I mean, I mowed lawns, and I used to make potholders, you know.
Yeah. You was never afraid of hard graft.
No, I never was afraid of hard work. I enjoyed it, and I always wanted to make money, you know, and I saved my money pretty well. Anyway, long story short. So I went up and auditioned for that job, and I got it. And then that led from an hour a week show. Then after a few months, they gave me Saturday nights, you know, Sunday nights. Mm-hmm. And then that led to summer replacement when the main disc jockeys would go on vacation. I had to fill in for them. And then finally my own show. And it wasn't until years later that I looked back on it and I thought, wow, how fortunate I was. Because we're talking 1963, you know, that this began. And after I got out of my home, you know, left my hometown and went on to bigger cities, I would tell people this story, people in the business. They'd say, wait a minute, you had a radio studio in your school in a small town in Illinois? And I said, yeah. I don't know how it became about, but I was very, very lucky, you know, right time, the right place.
Yeah, no, definitely. And to be honest, with the amount of traveling that you've done, when you was doing disc jockeying, as a young man, you must have had some amazing experiences.
Yes. Most of them I can't tell you about, Wayne. I
was going to say, most probably quite controversial.
No, nothing like that. But I really have. It's been an incredible journey. This is my 50th year in the business, and it's gone by so fast. But looking back, of course, I have scrapbooks and pictures, and some of which I put on Facebook of the people. You know, I've been fortunate to meet people well-known people, you know, in all walks of life, from the music business, the music industry, to government and politics, and it's just been incredible, and I really have had a good time.
Excellent. And so, after doing so many shows over so many stations, had you already become fairly well known before moving on to Imus in the Morning?
Yes, pretty much. I was labeled by some of the industry, the radio and television industry publications, like Billboard magazine, and this was before Rolling Stone, but as a wunderkind. You know, once I got to Cleveland, I was only 21 years old, and I was doing the afternoon show.
And that's still really young.
At 21 years of age, I was doing the afternoon show, which is the second most important. It's called drive time, afternoon drive time. That's when people are going home from work. In the morning, of course, morning drive time is the highest paid position. But I was, in the eighth largest city in the country. So somebody picked up on that and wrote an article, and then other magazines and newspapers started writing. There's this guy in Cleveland he's only 21, and my God, he's doing what guys usually takes them 30 years to do.
Like the prodigal child.
Yes, the prodigal child. That's the golden boy. That's what it was. And I was able to move up fairly quickly. I left Peoria in 1968, so I was.
You was flying through the ranks.
Kind of. I was only a year and a half in Fort Wayne, and then I went to Cleveland, where I was for 3 years, then Chicago for a year, and then New York. When I started in Peoria, after I had been there a year or so, I knew I loved doing it, but I looked around at myself and looked around at the other people there, and I said to myself, I really like this, and I think I can go far, but I've seen a lot of people already who were fascinated with the business and thought they would go to bigger cities, but it didn't happen, and they just held on to this, and God bless them. I mean, some of them are very happy there, but I knew I wanted more. So I said to myself, if I don't get to a major city, like a Cleveland or, when I think about Chicago or New York, that's too much wishful thinking. But I said, by the time I'm 30, it gives me, 10, 11 years, then I'm going to do something else. I'm going to try something else because I think I can do very well at, whatever I decide to do. And it happened when I was 21. So, I didn't have to worry about that anymore.
No, that's the thing. No contingency plan was needed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then...
Thank goodness, because like I said, I don't know what else I would have tried because I'm not really very good at anything else. I can't hammer a nail without breaking something, and I can't imagine myself working in an office, sitting there for 8 hours a day with the same people. But of course, I haven't had to, and I'm jaded because one of the great things about what I do is, I'll go to one place at 9:30, at one studio at 9:30 in the morning, let's say, work for maybe half an hour or 40 minutes doing a commercial or something, and then I'll go across Manhattan and to another studio with a different group of people. Then I'll have a couple hours off. So it's it's really wonderful, and there's no heavy lifting.
Yeah, you don't put your back out very often.
And I get to wear jeans and t-shirts, whatever I want.
Yeah, well, that's one of the lovely things about the audio medium.
Now that I think about it, it's kind of like being a rock star, except for the girls and the drugs and whatever else they get.
Oh, I'm sure there's a few groupies.
Oh, no. Not when you're 65 years old. Well, there are, but they're old ladies. I'm joking.
When you was in New York, did you go straight to Imus in the morning, or?
Well, here's the funny thing about the Imus thing. When I was in Cleveland, as I mentioned, after I had been there about a year, this wild, crazy new disc jockey came out of California named Don Imus, and he came to Cleveland at a different radio station. And so I was doing an afternoon show at one station in Cleveland. He was doing a morning show at another station. He was there a couple of years. I was there 3 years. I never met him in Cleveland. And I left there and went to Chicago for a year, and then I went to New York. But when I went to Chicago, I got a call right away from the guy who had been my board operator, my engineer in Cleveland. And he, in the interim, had moved back to New York, where he's from, and got a job at NBC, where Imus was working, doing mornings now. And one day, Walt Ryan was his name. He called me and he said, "Hey, I was talking with Imus this morning, and he asked me, did you ever work with Larry Kenney over at WKYC in Cleveland?" And Walt said, "Yeah, I was his board operator." Well, again, I'll try to be brief. So the thing was that Imus had apparently had listened to me when he was in Cleveland too, and admired my show, the voice, especially the impressions and the characters I was doing. So he said, had Walt call me and say, "You think you'd like to do some stuff with Imus?" So for 1 year, while I was on the radio And while he was on, because in Chicago I was doing a morning show,
Mm-hmm.
and of course Imus was in New York doing the morning show. So for a year we would get together on the phone during a newscast on top of the hour, and he would say, for example, okay, why don't you do Richard Nixon today? Here's the premise. You know, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking with Henry Kissinger, and I would ad lib a 2 or 3 minute routine that he would tape and then play on, you know, in a few minutes on his show. And we did that for a year, never having I even did his nightclub act with him. He did nightclubs in New York, and he would call me at home while he's on stage. They would say, somebody would walk on stage during his act and say, Mr. Imus, the president's calling, you know, and I would do that. Well, then I got the chance, I got an offer to come to New York and do a radio show at another radio station. And that's when I joined his staff too, 1973. And I kept doing that for 35 years till 2008.
Wow. And that is
wow.
That's the thing. That's the thing. That's a testament to how happy you must have been in that job.
Oh, we had a great time, and we traveled. It was a radio show when I first joined him in '73, and then in '86 he got an offer from NBC to syndicate his radio show. I mean, to put his radio show on television. In other words, we did the radio show as we always had, but they put cameras in the studio and broadcast it live on MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed everything because, well, when we were only on radio, I would get to NBC at about noon and just record my little 3-minute bit for the next day, and I'd be there maybe a half hour, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went to television, I had to leave my house at 4 o'clock in the morning, like 4:30 in the morning, drive to Secaucus, New Jersey, which is about an hour away. That's where MSNBC was. Get my makeup on, costume, or whatever character I was doing that day, and do the show until 9 o'clock, and then take the makeup and costume off, head to Manhattan, and do the commercials and the Thundercats and all that kind of stuff. So, but I was young then, you know, Wayne. I could do all that stuff.
Well, that's the thing.
Now I walk from one room to the other, take a nap, you know.
Yeah.
Different
pace of life.
So I chew a little bit, take a nap.
Yeah, but it works for cats.
So, it does.
Yeah. So it's obviously just that lingering element of Thundercats laying inside your subconscious there.
You know, maybe that's it. They take a lot of naps, don't they?
Yeah.
That's right.
So, and you even hosted your own game show for a little bit.
I did, yes. In New York, I did a program that was on every night, Monday through Friday, for a half hour called Bowling for Dollars, in which it was done at Madison Square Garden. They had a bowling center there. And people would come on the show, and they would actually bowl, and they would win prizes and money, you know, depending on how well they bowled. And I did that for 3 years. I was the host of that show.
It's fantastic. How was the transition from like radio to TV?
I didn't. After that, I never did television again because I mean it was fun and everything, but I had become so accustomed to. Once I had stopped doing my own radio show where I had to sit there for 4 hours, I had become so accustomed over the years doing commercials and things like that to, as I said, going to one place for half an hour and then getting to go somewhere else. And when you do television, especially, the game show wasn't too bad, but we taped 5 of them in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to be, you know, just waiting around. And then I did a couple of films. I did some on-camera television commercials. I did a couple of soap operas. And the waiting around, you would get there at 7 in the morning, let's say for a soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
You arrive at the studio at 7 in the morning and sit down and have a read through the script. And then while the women were getting their hair done and their makeup put on and stuff, you just sit around and wait. And it went like that all day, you know. And I don't like waiting around. So
No.
I told my agent, no more on camera stuff.
So then, obviously, you concentrated more on your voiceover work.
That's all I do now is the voiceover work. Yeah.
Yeah.
My business card says "We'll talk for food." Larry Kenney, vocal prostitute. We'll talk for food.
And that's the thing. A lot of our American listeners would recognize you as Sonny the Cuckoo Bird and Count Chocula.
Yes, that's right. I've been the voice of the two mascots for the cereals, Count Chocula and Cocoa Puffs, for about 38 years or 39 years.
That's another long stint. It just shows how happy the companies are with your work.
Could be. I think it could also be, of course, that they just haven't bothered to find somebody else. But
too lazy.
Yeah. It's mine.
Let's talk about Thundercats.
Yes, I've heard of that show.
Yeah, I think you might be vaguely familiar.
Yes, I am. I am quite familiar with it, as a matter of fact. It's been a long time, though. It's been, almost 30 years? Actually, as a matter of fact, we started recording it in 83, so it's been 30 years since we began recording it.
I know it finished airing in its original run in 89, but I'm assuming you recorded them quite far in advance.
We did. We began in late 83. I believe it was like late October. And it didn't begin airing until, I think, the spring of 85. So we've been recording a little over a year before it went on the air, because we had to do 13 shows first. In the television business, you record, the standard number of episodes is 13.
Mm-hmm.
You record 13 episodes and then try to sell it to a network. And then if they buy it for 13, then if the show does well for them and they want more, then they'll buy another 13, or they'll buy more than that. So we had to record 13 and have those in the can before they could sell it to somebody.
And the first season of Thundercats actually had about 60 episodes. I
don't recall. You say the first season?
Yeah.
It probably did, yeah. That's the entire year. That's right. It probably did, yeah. All in all, we had 130 of them.
That's to be honest, over here they actually only aired the first season.
Oh, the second season was never aired there, huh?
No, because we had all of the first season, and then it finished on Lion-O's anointment trials.
Really?
And then
all... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and then we had one direct-to-VHS release, which was Thundercats Ho, the 5-parter, but they never showed the remainder of Thundercats. So it was.
Oh, gee.
It wasn't until much later on that until it actually came out on DVD, that I imported it from America to see the rest.
I was not aware that they never showed all of them on British TV. Well, at least you got to see them when the DVD came out, right? It
was brand new Thundercats. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was probably great because the quality is better. It's on DVD, of course. It's better than the quality on your television set from broadcast channels, sure.
Definitely.
So I'm glad you got to see them all finally.
I know, it took long enough, but I was, to be honest, it was quite painless because I was oblivious to their existence until the internet came about.
Well, I'm sure that's true with a lot of people, especially people in the United Kingdom and other places in the world. It ran nearly everywhere. I remember about 10 years after we started, after it was popular here.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that it was airing in other countries, and I once got a check from Sri Lanka for like $4 because they ran one episode.
They didn't quite get it. Now, the Thundercats came out at a time where He-Man was reigning supreme.
Mm-hmm.
Was Rankin and Bass trying to recreate the success of Masters of the Universe? Was that quite a influential thing when they were trying to put together the show?
I'm sure it was part of it. I don't really know. We never discussed with the Rankin Bass people when I say we, I mean the actors.
Mm-hmm.
We were just glad that they were finally doing a cartoon series in New York. because up until that point, almost all animated series and specials were done either in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
Or Florida at Disney World, and the Disney Studios, you know, and Warner Brothers, of course, in California and all of that. Nobody had done any, as far as we knew, any animation in New York forever.
Mm-hmm.
So we were pretty excited about that.
And I have to say, the team that they got for the animation there, one thing that they had over Filmation was that they were so much better at the animation.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, Rankin Bass did a great job with it. It was a Japanese company that did the animation.
So
that's why when you watch the original Thundercats, and probably the same today,
mm-hmm.
at the end, the credits, you'll see, you know, actors Larry Kenney, Peter Newman, Lynn Lipton, and so and so and so, animators.
Unpronounceable.
Yeah, all Japanese names.
So, just out of curiosity, did you ever get to meet John Irwin, who voiced He-Man?
No, I never did. If he's still around, I'll probably see him eventually. I do a lot of Comic-Cons now. Mm-hmm. I've been doing more and more of those over the last few years, and getting to meet so many people from, you know, I'm meeting people that I watched when I was very young, you know,
mm-hmm.
from TV series and from animated series. And I've had a chance to meet Stan Lee. I don't know if you're familiar with Stan Lee.
Yes, big
he's 90 years old, and he's still out there doing the Comic-Con circuit.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I get to meet lots of voiceover people and actors. It's a lot of fun to go to them.
They amazing fun. Now, was you approached for the job, or did you audition? Yeah,
you audition for the original one. Yeah. It's like everything else that I do in my business, almost everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes your agent will get a call from somebody that says, we want Larry Kenney. But most of the time, it's you go audition for it. I didn't audition for the new Thundercats series because they knew they wanted to use me for that. But
yeah.
I did audition for Rankin Bass.
So when you was auditioning, did they have any preliminary pictures of the characters?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the walls were lined with pictures of all the characters. When you arrive, actually before a week or so before, they sent each of us a packet of synopsis of the series, you know, and description of the characters, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got there, they said, "Have you decided which characters you'd like to read for?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to read for Lion-O and Jackal-Man, and I forget who else I read for." That's how they did it. And then you go home, and then either you never hear from them, your agent never calls you about that job again, or in my case, thankfully, a few days later they call and say you got the job.
So was there any sort of, like, from looking at the visuals, was there any sort of process in your mind of trying to think, well, Lion-O looks like he should sound this way, or?
Yes, well, they told us, first of all, the Thundercats themselves, Lion-O, Panthro, Chitara, and pardon me, and Tigra, were not. They told us they're not. They need to sound human.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though they're half cat or whatever.
They don't want them purring.
They didn't want any quote cartoon voice for those.
Yeah.
For the mutants, you know, Mum-Ra, and I also read for Jackal-Man. So anyway, so when I was deciding how I'm going to make Lion-O sound. It's actually just my voice, obviously, as you can hear, although I'm a little raspy right now. Pardon me. I've been yelling all day for a show we have over here called Best Week Ever. It's on VH1.
Oh, cool.
And I have to scream. I say, it's the third week of April, 2013, the best week ever. And I did that for 2 hours today.
So I'm really excited.
It's the same voice I use on the commercial we have here for, or lots of commercials for 12 years for a candy called Skittles. Do you have that over there?
Yes, we do.
I wonder if they use my commercials.
Taste the rainbow.
At the end, I'm sorry?
Taste the rainbow.
Feel the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
Yeah,
that's me. That's a great job because whenever I go in, it's just 6 words that I have to say. Actually, there's only one new word each time. because it's always something the rainbow, taste the rainbow. So I told him one day, I said, why don't you just book me for an entire day and book a studio, and we'll record every verb in the English language, and we won't have to. They didn't like that idea.
That's it. Cut and paste job. That'll be fine.
Why not? That's what I'm thinking. You know, ameliorate the rainbow, taste the rainbow, fornicate the rainbow. Oh no, we can't use that.
So, for all of the voice actors that were participating in Thundercats, at the time, was it just another job?
Well, sure. At the very beginning, because we got, we started recording it, and it's a job. But once we began, we got into it, several episodes into it and everything. I remember chatting with people during breaks and things and saying, this is good material. It's well written, and this could go somewhere, And then, of course, we soon found out that it was becoming a big hit, and we were all excited. But yes, of course, initially it's another job, But in our business, another job is big because in our business, and when I say our business, I mean the acting profession. Whether you're doing animated shows or pardon me, or you're doing a live television show or film or a movie or whatever. Sometimes jobs are few and far between. I mean, for actors, as I guess everybody realizes, you're not working every day at the same job, and sometimes you go for a stretch of either weeks or I guess sometimes months. When you're first starting out. So my point is that at first it was just a job, but we were all happy to get the job, because we knew if it worked, if it became successful, it would be a regular job. And as I think I told you, we ended up working on Thundercats for like 3 years. And
it ended up so quite early on, you guys started to click that you might actually have something special.
Right. We recognized the quality of the writing. And then once they started showing us some of the animation that had been completed, we recognized that for the time it was very well done. The music was a fantastic music. So you once you've been in the business long enough and you've either done some of these shows or you've auditioned for enough of these shows and watched them on TV, you can spot quality. You can spot as an actor, you can tell by the scripts and by the people you're working with and for. That's a good gig, and we knew early on this was a good gig. So,
after recording 130 episodes, how close did the team get?
Oh, we became like a family. We were having Christmas parties, during that time, and we also we were all on Thundercats, and then most of us went on to do Silverhawks, which we did about 65 episodes of that. And then we did a show called Tiger Sharks, which didn't last that long. It was only about, I think, 25 or 30 episodes. And then we did 3 or 4 animated holiday specials for Rankin Bass, some of which still run at Christmas time today. One's called A Star for Jeremy. One is called The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, which we were all delighted to work with Sir Alfred Drake on that one.
Wow.
He played, I think, Santa Claus and a couple more. So for 4 or 5 years, we were working together on Rankin Bass things. And then Bob McFadden and I had been working together for years at that time. He and I both do cereal commercials here in the United States, breakfast cereal commercials. I've been the voice of one called Count Chocula for 35, 37 years, and one called Cocoa Puffs. I'm the mascot for that, the voice of the Sonny the Cuckoo Bird, who sounds like this. Up here, I will go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So we all work together, and again, in our business, in the voice acting business, you don't often get a chance to work with the same group of actors for long periods of time. You're doing 60-second commercials, and then maybe I'll see you in a couple of years on another job. But we were together weekly for 4 years or more.
In that sort of time, you do grow really close to people as well.
Either you grow close or you end up hating each other.
Assess each other, yeah. So,
but this group we had was just the greatest group of people, great actors, and we all had the same sense of humor, and that's why the outtakes came about. We got along so well, and we still do. Those of us who are not still around.
Yeah. No, and I was you did touch on something that I was going to speak about later, but it seems you spoke about it. At the same time that you was like around the same time that you was doing Thundercats, you actually done a show called Silverhawks. I don't think that actually aired over here. What was it about?
Silverhawks was a group of they were in space. It was a futuristic thing. They were fighting evil in outer space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the name Silverhawks came because they flew. You know, like my character flew a jet fighter, and the other ones flew other things. But they were, as I recall, totally human. Whereas Thundercats were half animal, half human.
Okay.
And then Tiger Sharks, they were half fish and half human.
So they were really going for the half-breed sort of feel, because...
Exactly. Well, to give you an idea, my character in that show was Dolph. Now, you guess which fish he was.
I'm guessing it wasn't a seal.
No, it was actually a walrus. That's not a fish, is it? It was a dolphin, of course, yeah.
Which isn't a fish either.
Well, no, most of them aren't fish. They're mammals, but, you know, it's the same idea. They were half, let's say, underwater creatures.
Yeah. And so, what do you think it was like between them three shows that made Thundercats the one that lasted?
Well, gosh, I've never been asked that, and that's a good question. It just everything came together, I guess. You know, the first of all, the idea of the characters, I guess, sparked everybody's imaginations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to this day, I even we did the new series, the new Thundercats series, I was excited about watching that. There's just something about the characters in that, you know, the half man, half tiger, and half lion and things like that. I don't know. It was just done so well. And interestingly, the same people, basically, the same voice cast. I think it was the same writers, pretty much, and the same animators on the other two series. But Thundercats just clicked. It's something about it just grabbed the imagination of the audience.
Well, for me personally, it had like a great mix between like cool technology, mythology, magic.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then also it had some great stories that always like conveyed a strong like moral lesson.
Exactly. Yeah, like I said, all the elements just kind of came together. You're right. It did have all those elements. Whereas I'm thinking back now, the other shows didn't really. I think that probably Silverhawks, although it was a good show, and as I said, we did 65 episodes of that, and it ran on network television here, and they made DVDs of that too. But I think the fact that it was set in space, it kind of limited its chance for varying plots and locations and things like that. You know?
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I'm just an actor. I just read what they tell me.
But also, sometimes lightning doesn't always strike twice.
That's true. Yeah.
But with Thundercats, unlike He-Man, like where He-Man always had a moment at the end of the show where like he would like face the audience and speak directly to them to like push the moral of that story directly at the audience. Thundercats done it a lot more subtly, where at the end of the show there would always be a scene like after the episode's events where they would all just like relax and discuss what had happened.
Exactly. They would talk about the moral as conversation.
Yes. Exactly. Which I think was much more effective at conveying the moral lesson.
Yeah, as opposed to looking at the audience and saying, now remember, right? We did, although someone reminded me recently by posting it on my Facebook page that I did a public service announcement as Lion-O, and it's so cheesy when you look at it because, you know, it goes back to the 80s, and it's Lion-O and I think Chitara it's a don't drink. You know, it's Lionel looking at the audience and saying, "This is Lionel. Alcohol is for adults only. So kids, don't use alcohol." You know, it's like the Nancy Reagan "Just Say No" thing. You know.
Yeah.
So, but that was not a part of the show. That was, probably played during the commercial break during the show or something like that.
I'm going to have to try and find that on YouTube.
Yeah, I know it's on there because someone posted it on my Facebook page, and then I went to YouTube and looked at it. So.
Wow, I'll go out to check that out.
Probably under Lion-O PSA, public service announcement, or Lion-O don't drink or something like that.
Yeah, more than likely.
It's about 20 seconds long, I think, or 30.
Yes, but that's Thundercats I haven't seen.
There you go. That's right.
Exactly.
It'll be new to you.
Exactly. Another great way that the show conveyed morals was through Jaga.
Yeah.
Because
Jaga the Wise.
Yes, and I always found those moments where Jaga was directly speaking to Lion-O was also another just amazing way of getting across a moral. I'm going to be totally geeky now because there's one instance that always comes to mind in the really early on, the second episode, where Lion-O's about to go and hunt a deer.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sword of Omens flies out of his hand and digs into the ground, and he's trying to put it out and he can't, and then suddenly Jaga just appears.
Right.
And I'm going to do an awful Jaga impression now. But he's like, the sword will not obey you, Lion-O.
Remember Lion-O.
Yeah, he's like, the sword will never obey an order to destroy Warrantley. And it's like, them sorts of things where it was doing it in a way that just spoke to the back of your mind.
Exactly. Now that you mentioned it, I remember that. It was something about, like you said, remember Lion-O, the Sword of Omen will never obey a command to do something, to kill wantonly or something like that.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me that when they released the DVD set, Warner Brothers released the DVD set of Thundercats a couple or 3 years ago. Here, of course, Earl Hammond, who portrayed Jaga and Mumra, he had passed away. So they asked me if I would do Jaga on the DVD in an interactive. There's an interactive game or something on there. I forget what it is now.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll tell you what. Let me practice it, and if I feel that I can do it justice and do justice to Earl's memory, I will do it. But if I try it at my house and my microphone and everything, and I don't feel that I've got the impression, if you want to call it that, down, then I'm not going to do it. So it turns out that I was able to, and I was happy to do it.
And that's amazing because Jaga is such a distinctive voice.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Very wise and very gentle and very caring. But don't mess with me.
I know. That's the thing. He was a badass as well, though.
He was in his early years. Yeah, he could be a badass. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, even when Grun the Destroyer comes back and he has a big battle there.
Right.
I know these are probably storylines that have long left your memory by now.
Oh, of course they have. Sure. Listen, when I'm at Comic Cons and or on the street and people come up to me and want to talk about the show, there's always someone who says, Mr. Kenney, in episode 127, when Lion-O, and I stop him right there and I say, you know what? You know more about the show than I do, believe me. So I probably can't answer your question. I'll try, but I probably can't,
It's true of other shows, though. Like when you're actually speaking like when I've done interviews with Star Trek actors, there are certain questions that you're much better off asking the writers.
Sure, of course. Especially if the question has to do with what was the motive of the character to do that, or something.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea. From now on, I'll say talk to the writers.
So with with your hazy memory of Thundercats, is there any particular moments or episodes that you still remember that were personal favourites?
You know, I've asked that so many times. There really aren't, Wayne, any particular moments, and I think the reason for that is, as I said earlier, producing the show, recording the show with all those great people was so wonderful in itself. We had so much fun every time we got together. Every time we recorded an episode, we had so much fun, and we all really put everything into the show because we knew what it was about. We knew what it meant to people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really remember the only. I don't remember one moment, but the whenever Earl Hammond would do Mum-Ra, and we didn't discuss this earlier, did we?
No.
Earl Hammond. I don't know if any of you folks have seen a picture of him, but when he was doing his lines as a Mum-Ra, he looked like Mum-Ra, and I've always wanted to ask somebody from Rankin Bass, and I haven't had a chance to. Did you guys draw Mum-Ra after watching Earl record it? Well, of course they couldn't have. They had him drawn first, but he would stand there at the microphone, and you know when Mum-Ra says, he begins that building up to ancient spirits of evil transform, and he gets more and more into it. And as you recall, watching Mum-Ra, he would drool, right? It would stuff come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Well, Earl did that as he was recording. He would begin spitting and drooling, and he would wipe it away as he's talking.
What?
And it got to the point, it was such a joke with the rest of us that, for example, I would turn to Peter Newman or someone, and I'd say, next page, I looked ahead, next page, Earl's going to do Mum-Ra. So we'd all start backing away from him. And by the time he got to Mum-Ra, the ever-living, we'd all be in a corner with plastic sheets over our heads.
Everyone covering their notes.
He would spew this spittle, and but it was. I guess every actor has his own method, you know, and that was Earl's.
It'll be interesting to see if you go back, if the early episodes he didn't have the spittle, but then later on they incorporated it in.
You're not saying that you know for a fact that he didn't have early.
No, it'll be interesting to see.
If they drew it after Earl. I don't think so, but that would be funny.
So out of curiosity, when you was making the show, what actually comes first, the animation or the voice acting?
The voice comes first because it would be almost impossible, not impossible, but extremely difficult for actors to be looking at their script and emoting and having to look up at the screen. To match the lip movement perfectly would be almost impossible. So you do the very first thing that's done, well, of course, is the writing, but then you record the actors, and once that's all edited, it's sent to the animators, and then they begin animating, and then it's their job to match up their animation to the voice.
Let's think, they've got the tough job.
Yeah, they've got the tough job. All we have to do is talk. That's right. Of course, these days it's probably much easier with computers. You know, I mean, you have to remember that back in the 80s we didn't have computers. There was no computer, no CGI.
No.
Everything was hand-drawn on cells. I wish I'd kept some of those cells, I'll tell you. They're probably very valuable now because they don't make them anymore.
No, I would have thought they're worth a fair bit, definitely.
Yeah.
So, other than Mum-Ra, obviously you're not allowed to say Jackalman. Who was your favourite villain?
My favorite villain?
Yeah.
Well, it has to be Mum-Ra. I mean, one of the greatest villains of all time, you know.
Yeah. So,
Jackalman I like because I did Jackalman, and I remember when we began doing the show, and even before we started recording, of course, when I was deciding how I wanted to make the voice. My inspiration, well, I was thinking, okay, he's a jackal. A jackal is, I don't know if they really are, but at least what I had in my head about jackals is that they're sly and cunning. You know, they kind of like a wolf. You know, they kind of sneak around and sneak up on people. And so I wanted something that sounded kind of, you know, cunning and sly and evil. And it came into my head from an old cartoon show that I loved when I was a kid, called Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that in the UK?
We did, though. I bypassed that one. It was a little bit before me.
Okay. Well, there was a character called Snidely Whiplash, and he was the villain in the mode of the old with the top hat and the cape, and the big mustache, and he'd say, "I'm going to tie you to the railroad track now," and
yeah,
he was greasy sounding. So I thought of him, and that's kind of the voice I gave to Jackalman. We must get the Thundercats, yes.
Oh, can you just say Monkeyan in Jackalman's voice?
Monkeyan, come over here. What is it? That was Peter Newman with Monkeyan, and he had the greatest.
It was fantastic. It really was. So, do you still get residuals from the DVD releases?
No. We actually, our deal was, as I recall, again, it's been so long ago, we got paid a hefty amount to do the show, and I think at least I signed a contract that called for a certain amount, up front, or as we recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only residuals I got, I think, were from anything non-domestic overseas.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I mentioned that one check from Sri Lanka. Now, wait a minute. You know what? Thinking back, I'm wrong. I apologize. Yes, we did get residuals. Yeah. I'm thinking back now. I remember checks coming in, frequently for after it had been on the first time after its first run. Then when it went into reruns, I think it went over to another network, Cartoon Network or something.
Yeah.
And then we got residuals. Yeah.
So, how was it to revisit Lion-O for the skit you done on Family Guy?
Well, it was fun, except that I had hoped when I accepted that gig that I would get to meet Seth MacFarlane and some of the other actors. But things are a lot different today in the business. I ended up in a studio in New York by myself with Seth and the engineer in L.A. In my headphones. So I didn't get to meet the genius, Mr. MacFarlane. I consider him a genius.
So it was bittersweet.
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say that because I'm just so happy to have done it, and I almost didn't do it. I turned it down at first because my agent, I had seen a little bit of Family Guy on TV, and I thought it was funny as heck. It was a very, very funny show. But when my agent called and said they'd like you to do a Lion-O thing on Family Guy, I said, no, I don't want to do that. It's a great show, but as I think I told you earlier, I'm very protective of the legacy of Thundercats and Lion-O and all of that. And while I think Family Guy is great for today, it's pretty risque. It's like a lot of the shows. If you think about what we were doing back in the 80s, there was nothing like that back then. I'll just say it. It's dirty. It's a lot of profane things.
That's the thing.
I'm not a prude. I watch them all the time. I think they're funny. But I didn't want Lion-O to be involved in that. I was afraid that Thundercats fans who would see that would be upset. So then my son, who at the time was probably 19 or so, he said, "Dad, you got to do it. It's one of the biggest shows. Big actors are asking to be on it. Like The Simpsons." I said, "Well, okay, have them send me the script." Well, they sent me the script. I read that, and I said, "Absolutely not." Because you've seen the episode, right? Yes, I have. So then my son again said, "Dad, you got to remember that the Thundercats fans are not kids anymore. You're not talking about 10-year-old kids. You're talking about adults in their 30s, and they're going to love it." And I said, I hadn't thought of it that way. I guess in the back of my mind was, like he said, that Thundercats fans were 10 years old and shouldn't see that stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You've got the fans that are growing up, because I've got 2 young daughters, and I know as soon as they hit an age, they are being raised on Thundercats.
Oh, great!
But but you're right. The initial fan base has grown up with it, and I personally thought it was hysterical.
I did too. Well, I went ahead and did it, and then kept my fingers crossed, and waited for emails saying, "How could you?" Or you've let us down, and nothing of the sort ever came. Not one bad email. Everybody was just saying, "Wow, how great to have you on, have Lionel and Family Guy and everything." So I breathed a sigh of relief.
What was funny was just because beforehand, Lionel was talking about like trying to figure out what Mum-Ra was up to.
Yeah.
And then you just assume he's looking through the sword to find out what they're up to.
Exactly.
But no, he's watching Chitara.
I'm sure for those people listening to this who don't know what we're talking about, I'm sure it's on YouTube. I'm sure you can find it.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
It was in Dewey Griffin, The Untold Story. That was
Yeah.
the name of the episode, yeah.
Yeah, that is the one. So,
See, I haven't forgotten everything.
no, you've held on to a lot. To be honest, with the amount that you've done in your career,
Thank you, Carl.
My memory is awful. I would not remember half of it.
Oh, you certainly remember a lot about Thundercats.
Yeah, well, I get told off from my wife for being so forgetful, and I just said,
well,
yeah.
Sure, because you forget your anniversary and her birthday and Christmas. That's why she.
I know that. Well, that's the thing. I just say, but honey, you've got to understand. My brain pushes out all of the useless information and just retains things that it needs.
The important things, like Thundercats. You got the right priorities.
Exactly. So, how was it for you when you heard that Thundercats was coming back? It was being re-envisioned in 2011.
Well, it was really exciting. My agent called again and said Warner Brothers is doing a new Thundercats series, and they want you to be involved. Again, my first response was, let me see a script. I think it's a great, it's great that somebody's redoing it. But I said, I want to know, what kind of attack they're going to make on this. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be true to the original series in terms of the moral message, and things like that. So they sent me a script, and then I talked with Dan Norton, who was the head writer, and I could tell immediately that it was going to be great, because I could tell that Dan was just like you. He was a huge fan of Thundercats as a kid, and he let me know that the whole staff who was working on it was they were all. One second, am I still with you there?
Yeah.
I'm afraid I pushed the wrong button.
No worries.
So anyway, it turned out that the series was indeed true to the Code of Thundera and to the heart of the original Thundercats series. I was excited to be a part of it, and I think I was happy for the fans too, because I think them asking me to play Lionel's father was an homage, not to me, but to the original series and to the fans.
Yeah.
Because it showed that they were. It was a sign that they were aware of the original series and keeping it in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we were in San Diego at the Comic-Con, the huge one with 350,000 people from all over the world. And we played, we had one of those, I forget what they call them now, but they go into the auditorium and the audience is there, and it was a panel. That's what it was.
Q&A panel.
Q&A panel, and Dan Norton and some of the other Warner Brothers people and I were there.
Mm-hmm. And
before we came out, they played for the first time the full first episode, and we were backstage, so we could hear it playing and we could hear the response. And I had gone to get a cup of coffee or something, and when I came back, and again we're backstage, as I came back into that area, I heard a huge roar from the audience, cheering and clapping that went on. And Dan came over and he said, "Did you hear what they cheered at?" And I said, "No." He said, "You had just said, as Claudius, you had just done Thundercats, ho, and the audience went crazy.
Oh.
So that's when we knew that the audience was accepting it as, an homage to the original series.
Definitely. It brought tingles, goosebumps.
Yeah, it sure did. It did to me. It did to me too. And then I think that was near the end of the episode. And then when we walked out, and someone had handed me a foam rubber sword of omens that the Comic-Con was giving out, and when I walked out on stage holding that aloft, they went crazy again.
Excellent. So,
it was a big thrill. It really was. I almost teared up.
It's really sad that the new Thundercats only ran the one season.
I know. I thought it was a wonderful series. I thought they did a great job with it, and it's too bad they have finally announced that it's canceled. It's just a shame.
Do you know any of the behind the scenes politics with regards to that? I can tell
you one thing that I heard from a source that I won't name.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't because of low ratings. The ratings were pretty good on TV. It was because of lagging toy sales, which is kind of the way of the world today, I think, in this business. That if people don't buy enough action figures, then they take the show off. Now, that's just something that I heard from one person who's, in on what goes on over there.
Yeah.
And it may not be the official word, but that's what I heard. So.
To be honest, that wouldn't surprise me, because if you look at all of the TV shows that keep constantly running, like over the decades, it's always been the Transformers. It's always been like the ones where the action figures are constantly selling. But and to be honest, you never know. The actual toy line might not have been doing as well reflective compared to the new show, because probably a lot of the viewers of the new show was the same viewers from the 80s. That's
true. I hadn't thought about that, but I'm sure that most of them were. I'm sure that initially, that would be the audiences, because the young people don't know Thundercats, and so why are they going to tune into a show that, you know what I'm saying? So I think you got a point there. I think also the same person who gave me the information about the toy sales and things, he went on a bit more length, and he was telling me how he said that's a problem when you create a show, whether it's an animated show or a sitcom or anything else, but especially with an animated show, we have toys involved, that you can create the best show in the world, but then it's out of your hands. It goes to the distributors of the show itself, goes to network. And the toy sales are totally somebody else's. The Warner Brothers has nothing to do with the toys. They contract that too. This time it was Hasbro. And then you have distribution, that can be followed up or not done very well. So, the lagging toy sales does not necessarily mean that the show wasn't very good. So.
No.
But that's that end of the business, and I don't.
Unfortunately, there's nothing that you nor the writers nor the fans really can do to affect.
No. I know that there are many websites, Thundercats fans websites, and some of them even titled such things as "Save the New Thundercats" and "Bring Back Thundercats" and things. And so many fans worked very hard for it, but even that doesn't really help, in a situation like this. But I appreciate their trying.
For the guys that put in the effort to make the show, it must be nice to see that the fans also appreciate it.
I'm sure they were ingratiated by that.
One thing that I did want to touch on as well is you're still working to the bone. I only just found out that you've done a voiceover in Grand Theft Auto 4, and I was like, you know what?
Yes.
You was one of the radio presenters on.
I'm one of the disc jockeys, I guess, or I've never heard it. I've done 2 or 3 video games, Grand Theft Auto 4, and I did Mafia 2, and one called Alan Wake, The American Nightmare, I think. But the thing is, I never heard, except at the studio when they played some of it back, I never heard it because, well, for example, my son was playing Grand Theft Auto 4 one day, and I said, go to the part where I'm on it. He said, you can't do that because you have to play the game and get there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's
you
not
can't
that
just,
simple.
You can't just click to any part you want and listen to it. But I have heard on somebody posted on my Facebook page the link to my part on Alan Wake.
Yes.
Again, I'm a radio guy. I'm a talk show host. Yeah.
Exactly. So
those are kind of fun to do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Those are fun to do too, but it's much more fun to do an animated series where you're playing, wild characters and it's fantasy,
Definitely. Now, I was not really surprised to see, but your eldest daughter has actually followed in your footsteps.
Oh, she's gone beyond she's surpassed my footsteps. She's a film actress, a film movie star over here.
Was there, when she was starting out,
mm-hmm.
How did that make you feel to see that she was going into the same profession as you? Was there any sort of trepidation?
Let me tell you this. When she was about 12 years old, she asked me if she could start, auditioning for commercials and theater and films.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't think it's a good idea, but I want you to talk with my agent, Don Buckwell, because we were family friends too. We had been to his home for, visiting his family. So we were family friends, and I knew she trusted Don, and I didn't prep him. I didn't go to him and say, Don, try to, tell her she shouldn't do this. So she went and met with him in his office. I sat outside, and it turns out that what he told her was, you have plenty of time to be an actress. He said, I work with people all the time who were actors when they were children, and they now wish they hadn't started so early because they didn't have a childhood. If you become successful at all as a child actor, generally you don't have much of a childhood. You don't go to school with other kids. You have a tutor. You're off shooting a film. You don't go to birthday parties. He said to her, "Be a kid. If you want to be an actor, do plays at school."
Yeah.
And that's what she did. She did plays at school. At NYU, she was in the theater. She was in the theater department there. And then once she graduated college, she began in television and has done extremely well. And her husband is a very successful cinematographer on television. He's in charge of shooting two of the biggest TV shows over here, 2.5 Men and The Big Bang Theory. And they live in Malibu, California, and they're very successful. He just won his 3rd Emmy. So I'm very proud of her, as I am all my children.
Definitely. I was going to say
I'm sorry, Wayne, but she now has told me a number of times over the years how glad she is that she listened to, that she didn't get into business when she was younger. She's so happy she didn't do that.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of child actors come out damaged.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
not all of them, not all of them. Some of them are, but it's better just to have your childhood, be a kid, and then do what you want to do later. I mean, nobody starts being an accountant when they're 12 years old, or insurance salesman or a lawyer, So be a kid first and then do whatever you want. That's the advice I would give to anybody. Definitely.
And finally, what the fuck is a samouflage?
There is actually is a real thing. Somebody looked it up and told me. I take their word for it. And it sounds like it might be. It's some kind of a part for an engine, a samouflage. Yeah.
One of my favorite outtakes.
We didn't know that when we were filming. That's why that outtake when I think it's Pantro saying, "I'm going to have to replace the samouflage." You can hear me saying, "What the fuck is a samouflage?" And do you know that all these years later, about 30 years later, there's one cab driver in Manhattan, in New York City, that spots me maybe once every 5 months. It might be 5 years or 7 years in between times. But if it's summertime or spring, he'll roll his window down as he's driving by and yell, "What the fuck's a samouflage?" And I've never met him. I don't even know what he looks like, but I know it's the same cab driver.
Brilliant. Larry, before you go, may I ask you to do one favor?
I know what it is, but certainly. Go ahead and ask me.
Okay. Well, I've been struggling to lose weight for quite a while, and I can't afford a personal trainer.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if maybe you could get Lionel to just say a couple of phrases that I could whack on my iPod to egg us on.
Of course. Of course. Do you have those phrases in mind?
Well, I need maybe one or two just to keep me motivated when running. If I'm like feeling a bit down, gonna like give up. But then also maybe.
All right.
Yep.
Certainly. Do you want to record those now?
Yep.
Okay. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Come on, Wayne. Just a little while longer now. You're almost at the finish line. Come on, Wayne. Maybe this will help. When you feel you can't go any further, just do what Lion-O does. Just go, Thundercats! Ho! You like that one?
I like that, and maybe just one telling me off if I'm about to eat some snacks.
Oh, okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
So, Panthro, we've got to go to Cat's lair. And hang on a second. Wayne, put that down. Wayne, what has Lion-O told you? No fats, no sugars, and definitely no beer.
Brilliant.
Right?
No, thank you so much, Larry.
This pleasure, Wayne.
Means so much. May I just ask you to close with a Thundercats ho?
Certainly. You know who I always say that Chitara was the original Thundercats ho, but and Lynn Lipton doesn't think that's funny. All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Thunder, Thundercats, ho! I still got it.